Many, many years ago, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, Gary was a very thriving city.
I grew up in Gary. I grew up in Marshalltown. I could remember walking to one store right there on the east side. Back when I was a child, it was really nice in the area.
I grew up in Gary, and a child coming up, I saw many things that interest me. It was a very thriving city when I was young. A lot for the youth to do.
I was born and raised in Gary all of my life. My background is attended high school in Gary at, of course, Gary Roosevelt. And I was a two-sport athlete there. Had a wonderful time.
Well, I was born and raised here in Gary, Indiana. And what made Gary, Indiana great for me was that, first of all of my family was here. We would go outside in the winter time. We would make the snow angels. And it's just, I felt safe in the city of Gary. And you just felt a community, a sense of community.
I wasn't born in Gary. I am an Army brat. So I was born in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, while my dad was in the Army. And Gary was a home for both my dad and my mom. My mom was born in Gary, Ruth Marie Denny. And my dad, Richard James Comer, was born in Jackson, Tennessee. So he was part of the industrial migration with his parents coming up to work for U.S. Steel.
Gary has a rich history. Gary was founded in 1906. A lot of people don't know that. And Gary was created because of the steel mills. The steel industry decided to find them a location in the north along the Lake Michigan shoreline. Of course, they settled right here in Gary, Indiana. It wasn't even named Gary, Indiana at that point. It was just an area where the mills established themselves, and once they did that, they needed workers.
A lot of people worked in the mills in U.S. Steel, and those jobs were very good jobs. And I can remember when people that worked there, this was a little bit before me, when they said they used to go down to Texas on buses and pick up people just to work, because it was so many job openings in the area.
Think about African Americans who were workers in the South, sharecroppers, and working for other folks, and they saw an opportunity to come north to this great place, work in the steel mills, be able to make some money, and they did.
If you looked at it from persons who came as a migration from the South to get jobs, which is what was the impetus, then yes, people would say, I'm living good. You know, I got $50 in the bank and I'm feeling great. And I work in U.S. Steel, and I work in Bethlehem, and I work at, they had 2 or 3 jobs working, right? But the kind of work was heavy labor, a lot of uneducated. I mean, you know, Gary was known, Sonia X. You had a lot of literacy issues, a lot of education issues, because people came from not just the South, but from Puerto Rico, from Mexico. You know, you had a lot of people coming because it was a place where U.S. Steel had an opportunity where you could get in, and all you needed was a strong back.
I knew some even hadn't been to the 4th grade, but they had jobs and working, and they was happy with this area. And it was, I can remember when the traffic was bumper to bumper going to work.
We had a booming economy, but not at all a very integrated one.
In the mid-60s, when Richard Gordon Hatcher was elected mayor of the city of Gary, at that time, you know, the country was still facing challenges as it related to civil rights. And when Richard Hatcher became mayor of the city of Gary, it started a white flight. People did not want that type of leadership.
Probably what happens in many cases of transition is that you don't pull the trigger fast enough. When Frabo closed and a lot of those students came to Horseman and to West Side, you had people in the Horseman area who left all their furniture and left. And you didn't even know the homes were empty, because everything looked like it was still stable. That's the kind of flight that we saw. We had been exposed to racial conditions that we did not have the skills to handle.
Things wasn't getting done that should have been getting done, and businesses started moving out. I saw all of that. And as the businesses were moving out, wasn't no more coming in.
And if there's no jobs, you have to leave. You have to go find work. You got to go find food for your family.
I believe Gary's declined from its prominent years for a number of reasons. The most apparent one would be the decline of U.S. Steel and the absence of homeowners and businesses as a result of that. There's certainly other factors that come into play, such as lack of educational opportunities, I believe. And to that extent, if you just think about all those and sort of couple them together, it certainly created a perfect storm, if you will, for some of the conditions that we face today.
Gary was totally dependent upon steel. I mean, that was our only industry. And so the steel industry at one time, or during that time, decided to go to the legislature and suggest that they were paying too much in taxes to the city of Gary. And so they were allowed to actually assess their own taxes. And what happened with that was, it was a result of Gary losing almost 2/3 of the tax revenue that it was receiving from U.S. Steel. And U.S. Steel was making up almost 50% of Gary's entire tax base.
They took the tariffs off steel, and when they started bringing it over from other countries, the industry went down. The auto industry went down. When the auto industry went down, there was a lot of the steel we wrote was for automobiles, and that was a big difference.
When the steel industry took a hit, people began to lose their jobs, job markets began to dwindle. It became crime-riddled, a lot of gang activity, drug activity, abandoned buildings and apartments, and it was like crime took an all-time rise.
I've seen so many places close, so many departments close, so many people lose their jobs and their homes over the years.
A lot of my friends, I watched them go through because they didn't have anything but meal experience. So yeah, that did affect a lot of homes. Some of them even went as far as moving because they couldn't afford to stay where they were at. A lot of them lost their houses. Yeah, I saw that.
And when the citizens left, the businesses left because they were the majority owners of businesses at that time. And another problem was when Merrillville, you may not know, was a part of Gary at one time. Just like Glen Park, Miller, whatever, Merrillville was a part of Gary. And so they were allowed to disannex and become a town themselves. And as I said before, all the businesses left.
A lot of the stores were closing up and moving out towards Maryville and Crown Point, Hobart. And a lot of the main stores that we had to go to those different cities to get what we wanted. So we were more or less paying into their city instead of paying into our city, and that helped our city go down too.
Seeing the city go down and seeing the things change. And like I said, I can remember when I was a teenager, I don't want to say skipping school, but we was supposed to be in school and going to downtown Gary and all the stores that used to be down there and all the things we used to do, and all that's gone. It's just actually sad. And it's a lot of times in Marshalltown for years, I didn't even want to drive over there because when I drive through there and see the shape it was in, it's just sad.
I think we've learned our lesson. We know that we have to have a diverse economy. We can't depend on one industry. We can't depend on hard rock to carry us through. I think we learned that historical lesson that once you put all your eggs in one basket, once that egg bursts, then you have nothing left.
The way of life changed into what is a neighborhood? What is a community? You know, we grew up knowing everybody to now people don't know who live upstairs.
As a pastor, Hosea 4:6 tells us that we're destroyed for lack of knowledge. And when, for whatever reason, we don't get on the cutting edge of providing the real needs for the community, the inhabitants that are there will begin to leave. And so when we make things good for the people, then people will do good by staying and loving their city.
We gotta find ways to get the people to come back. Find ways where they can afford homes, find ways, things for them to do that they'll enjoy the city again. And because if the people left, now we gotta get them back. And not just building buildings, but we gotta find a way to build the people's desire to come back.
Some of the misconceptions about Gary is that Gary is just a bad place to live. When you speak about what incidents take place, whether it's murder, whether it's gun violence, whether it's drugs, you can't just compare the size of our city to Chicago or to other places. And so percentage-wise, Gary is not as bad as what some other places who have a higher population. And we have to stop speaking negative about it and speak positive so that we can have what we say.
From working with people in the corrections fields, working with the young men and women that are actually being incarcerated, do you know what they all have in common? Is they want to survive. And many times they have to be given that opportunity, have to be equipped or given tools to survive. And some of the people that society will say, oh no, don't go to Gary. Those are horrible people. They're not horrible people. They have hearts, they have emotions, they have feelings, and they're just looking for somebody that's really going to care for them and be there for them and help them get to that next level. Some of them have been undereducated, and if given the opportunities to be educated, they have amazing skills that they can use.
So that's why so many of us are a little concerned when industry start hiring these young people without a high school diploma, paying them $17 an hour, and they're quitting high school to go and work for these industries. But we need to look and forecast out, not just be myopic and look at what's there right this moment. We need to look at down the road, what is that gonna mean for people who are uneducated? What is that gonna mean if you can't read?
One of the essential qualities necessary to establish a safe and healthy environment in the city of Gary certainly would be employment opportunities. But as I mentioned earlier, educational opportunities also. In fact, I think the two go hand in hand.
We have a whole new set of needs that we didn't have in the past few decades. We have, for example, we have more students with autism. These days, there's more students with special education needs, more students testing in special education. And we need more resources to address these issues.
We need family-oriented programs. We need biblically based, sound environments. We need people who not just talk it, but demonstrate it.
I do know for a fact, working for the school district, and I don't say this just because I work for the school district, but because I'm in the schools and I've worked at different schools, so I get to see staff members and employees. There are a lot of great teachers in the Gary Community School Corporation who are concerned about the education of the students. And they are educating the students, and they're working hard to help students to achieve, to be productive citizens in life.
Picking up the banner to say, I don't want to be a part of a community is easy. Picking up the banner and say, I am the community is much harder.
There's a lot of innovators in the city of Gary with great ideas to take the city to the next level, to provide programs and resources that's needed.
We have people that really want to improve Gary, but they need resources, they need opportunities presented to them to make that happen. And I think that that's where our efforts are coming in with what we're doing at 1351 West 11th Avenue, is that we want to start some vocational programs, some certification programs. We want to train, we want to do job placement. We want people to go from homelessness to home ownership.
I always say that we don't change things by throwing money at it. We change things from the inside out. And so when we have people who care for people, then we're in a better position of giving people what they need so that we can get the city what it's needs. It needs a culture shift that will provide quality education, quality jobs, quality environments, quality communities. And that can only come by the love of God, which is, of course, as a church we preach through Christ, and having people who believe that and provide services of goods or what have you will help to change that. We have to get inside the people with a positive message, show them love so that they can change and become the new Gary.
We need more programs to meet the needs that the citizens who are moving into this city have for their children, for themselves. There's so much more we can do to make this city better.
We need people who are not selfish, but people who are supportive when it comes to our schools, when it comes to our community, when it comes to what Gary needs in order for success to come. And so I believe that's changing. I believe things are coming around where Gary will be what it is supposed to be, one of the most prominent cities in the country, being that we are so blessed to be by the railways, the expressways, by the airports, and have the beach waters. We are blessed, and I believe we're getting ready to see a turnaround.
Gary is a great city because of where it's located, right on the shores of Lake Michigan. Gary is in proximity to Chicago. Gary has a tremendous amount of advantages, and that lakefront is probably its diamond, its jewel.
Gary is like a diamond in the rough. A lot of people can't see it, but I've been seeing this for a long time. It's a lot of potential for Gary, but you just have to have the right people in place to bring that potential out.
And I believe within my own self, maybe in the next 5 years, Gary will not even look the same because of the restructuring that's taking place.
We believe that Gary is blessed, and God is blessing Gary with people who can make a difference. And this is why we are very hopeful and expecting for Gary to turn around and be back on the map like never before.
Keep the faith, but faith without works is dead. With faith, you must work the work and know that you have been created for greatness.
I am anticipating that we're going to have a rebirth, that Gary is going to rebound. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen tomorrow or the next day, but I see it very imminent. I see it about to happen.
Like many things, I think that the emphasis around Gary specific is not saying let's create everything from scratch, but let's look at our infrastructure and where there's been fractures. Where can we regain and build capacity and renew them? And some of those things may need to be antiquated and removed. We can recognize and celebrate their history, but let's not live in it. Let's live in the future we can create. And I think that that's going to be the win or lose of this